So I don't like Marvel movies. Okay, chill out. I used to like them back when I was 15, but then I realized that a lot of the structures and conventions are exactly the same in every movie, and the only thing they change is that it's a different good-looking guy every time. And I didn't want to see just the same white guy every time. I wanted women and I wanted queer people. I wanted people like me at the time. As well as the influx of male protagonists, I also realized that I wasn't really the main audience for these movies. Men were the main audience, and that's why there was this imbalance of female heroes and non-heterosexuality. The male gaze is a commonly used term to describe content that is primarily made for men despite the misrepresentation and or sexuality of the female form. This phrase was coined by film theorist and feminist Laura Mulvey. The more the male gaze has been identified and criticized in feminist theory, the less filmmakers tried to make it obvious, and instead attempted to widen their target audience. Times have changed since Mulvey's original article on the visual pleasures, and female-led films that showcase the character more than just a prize to be won are much more common. In a 2005 interview with Roberta Sassatelli, however, Mulvey redefines the male gazes as having evolved from the 1970s and instead have become much more attached to the dynamic of sexuality rather than specifically just gender. Although I agree with this, I believe that both are still very much in place, but in a different way than Mulvey stated. I believe it's important to advance these discussions to include the gender-diverse community and how fetishization has impacted the male gaze theory in different forms of media than Mulvey originally mentioned. Taking it back to cisgender females, sexuality has absolutely taken over as the primary male gaze in a more outward and explicit way than any time previously before the 21st century. By incorporating differing sexual orientations, we can widen our view on this and look further into how the body in everyday life is very different from the body circulated in images. Examples of the male gaze affecting representation of the female body through same-sex content include Ally McBeal, Cruel Intentions, and Kissing Jessica Stein, to name a few. Through all these examples, lesbianism is more a tool to appeal to male viewers than as a form of actual representation. Such images implicitly convey that the most desirable and acceptable form of female sexuality is that which pleases and plays to the heterosexual male gaze, titillating male viewers while reassuring them that the participants remain sexually available in the conventional heterosexual marketplace. This is simply a new realm to study in relation to Mulvey's critique on the male gaze as objectifying female bodies in sexual glorification instead of showing how they exist in the real world. But what do female bodies existing in the real world actually look like? Well, keeping with the queerness theme, lesbian and queer female identifying bodies can be so various, which is something that goes without saying. There is no one way to be female, and sometimes that does include sexual glorification aspects, but not in the way that we see in the media. It's not quite as mystifying as what is portrayed in the media, because bodies are not inherently sexual. As Butler says, the body appears as a passive medium on which cultural meanings are inscribed, or as the instrument through which an appropriative and interpretive will determines a cultural meaning for itself. The cisgender female body is not quite as mystifying as it once was. Now the gender-diverse body has taken over its place in full throttle, particularly through sexual activity itself. Neurologist and author Dr. Ogi Orgas found through an extensive study into online pornography that one of the most popular types of erotica is transgender porn. One male gaze has shifted from the cisgender female body to that of transgender female bodies. This is not to say that they are no longer interested in cisgender female bodies, but that a new age has now been proven to exist through online pornography that was previously unknown. Body glorification for transgender people has always existed. We just now have the statistics for this phenomenon now that there's online pornography readily available. To ignore this gender extension on the male gaze is to ignore the validity of trans women as people affected by feminist movements. In the same way that the male gaze was something that was identified and worked towards lesser sexual body glorification for cisgender females, the media must identify this too. Transgender and lesbian media cannot and should not exist solely for the consumption of heterosexual cisgender men. We must use our opportunities as queer people to represent these communities in ways that empower them and mystify sexuality. This is the only way to undermine the patriarchal stance of queer media. This is why we're making our documentary. Beyond the Binary serves as a solitary representation of this one group in Wellington and nothing more. However, it does give a voice to similar experiences felt elsewhere. We intend to give our queer subjects the ability to speak to their experiences without having an underlying agenda. Queer content should be made for and by queer people, which is why we're so motivated to make this documentary. Queer people need to see other queer people. And I need to see more queer content because Orange is the New Black just ended and I don't know where to get my lesbians now.